We have done our project on the open source project that is called Backstage. And Backstage is an open platform for building developer portals. Let me start by explaining what a developer portal is and why you would want one. These days, as developers, you are not only working on development, you're also working on the operations part, you're working on the security part, on the finance part, the machine learning part, and the documentations part. The job is so multifaceted these days that it gets tricky to be on top of everything. Backstage aims to do this. How does it do this? Very simple. It integrates a few different components into one graphical user interface that you can access through an online platform that can be hosted on any cloud service. It works through three main components. The TechDoc system, which is a way to store all of your technical documentation for all of your components. Through the software template system, which is a method to standardize software development within your organization and quickly develop and set up new component development. And lastly, through the plugin library. Backstage can be expanded with numerous amount of plugins through the plugin marketplace, which offers integrations with services like Docker or AWS. Backstage was built by Spotify. It aims to work within small developer teams and big developer teams, ranging from 1 to 1,000. And the three main problems that it tries to solve is the information sharing problem, the onboarding of new developers, and the fact that there are too many developer portals. So, as a quick recap, the goal of Backstage is to make sure that you can easily create new software, that you can manage your existing system, and that you can explore how the system that you currently operate actually works in practice. And all of that is being done through an open source platform. Now let's discuss the architecture.
Thanks, Thijs. As Thijs said, build, create, explore are one of the key points Backstage focuses on. But another sentence that often comes by in the documentation is to build an ecosystem, not a wilderness. Developers are not going to be very efficient when they have 10 or 20 years of portals just to maintain a microservice. No, they want one unified experience. That's what Backstage provides. It unifies all of the developer portals into one place. The explore part in this is that new developers are not lost in the wilderness. No, they get a nice road paved for them and they have a nice place to look up information. They can see how the architecture works and they see how the internal documentation, for example, works for a certain product. A lot of big companies adopt Backstage. Spotify, of course, HelloFresh, American Airlines. And why do they use this? Because all of the big software providers such as GitHub, Amazon Web Services, Kubernetes, and loads more all have plugins to integrate into Backstage. This means that all of their portals can be unified into Backstage. You can, for example, see the web server status in AWS. You can see the Kubernetes status, how many nodes you have. You can see the GitHub status, which pull requests are online, everything. The main stakeholders in Spotify are, of course, the Spotify themselves. In Backstage is Spotify itself. The 100 plus companies which have adopted it. A lot of contributors, from the companies that have adopted it. And all the plugin developers, of course. The core plugin collection of Backstage is 30, and there's hundreds of plugins around it for just on GitHub. What is Backstage meant for? It's meant for the platform engineers which manage the developer experience within a company. It's meant for end users. The developers, of course, they use it. And engineering managers. The engineering managers can then manage their developer teams easily, and they can easily get key performance indicators out from the platform. Looking into the architecture of Backstage, something gets really clear. It's really well designed. A lot of the architectural decisions have been logged into architectural decision records. And all the architectural decisions that are to be made are actually discussed on the GitHub or on the Discord server. So that all the architectural decisions are broadly supported by the community. Furthermore, the architecture really stands out in its modular plugins. The Backstage itself is really small and all the plugins really make it what Backstage is. And furthermore, it's really actively maintained, so all the architecture is really thought out. Let's say you want to build a feature for Backstage. A feature is not just proposed. No, it really needs to come from a good discussion. The core developers have books, storyboards where stories are made and they can be implemented later. There's an active Discord where proposal can be made, and the earlier mentioned RFCs are also a really good place to start. Let's say you have the proposal, it's done, you want to make something, you write the code, then it also has to be checked against the storyboard. The doc quality is verified by one of the pull request maintainers, and it's checked for loads of stuff. Is the documentation right? Is the code format right? All the end-to-end tests are run, everything.
Now we continue on to the main features in which Backstage facilitates the needs of its stakeholders. It saves a lot of time for developers using the following concepts. Templates provide an easy way for developers to start the creation of a new project without spending a lot of time setting it up. Standardized documentation and keeping it in the same place allows users to know what a piece of code does and provides them a way to learn what it does. Backstage can also automatically set up continuous integration pipelines for services created using Backstage, as well as providing many other useful configurations. Backstage uses plugins to provide its main functionality. Every feature a user wants Backstage to perform can be added using a plugin. Plugins are used to provide these features. They can be internal services, such as overview, showing the interdependency between services, documentation of APIs, tag docs, to-dos, and many more. Next to this, Backstage provides full integration of external services, such as GitHub, continuous integration and deployment, as well as security scanners and code quality scanners. These integrations are all packaged as plugins, which are available on the marketplace and can be easily added to Backstage to integrate their interfaces. This allows users to customize Backstage to fulfill the needs of their company. Whenever a plugin is not available, a user is encouraged to create these plugins themselves. Backstage offers them an easy way to do so.
The main architectural pattern used by Backstage is a common one for web applications. It relies on a backend for front-end architecture. The backend for front-end architecture is used to create the client-facing web apps. This code pattern allows the team to iterate faster through development of new features for Backstage, whilst maintaining control over the backend and not affecting the experience for users. The backend for front-end architecture relies on microservices. There are some examples of these microservices, for example the Core App API, which deals with the functionality of the core app. And you have the backend tasks, which will run frequently in Backstage for the backend task. You also got some common backends, but more importantly, you also have the plugin backends, such as the Lighthouse plugins. But how does it scale? Huge companies require huge scaling. Through its vast documentation, Backstage becomes easy to integrate and adopt in a company. When deploying, it is useful to read the documentation to make Backstage work in your environment. Backstage is mostly meant for reading documentation, sharing service status, and sharing project information. The backend can focus on database requests. Read-focused databases are generally speaking less resource intensive and less cheaper to run. Furthermore, because the application is containerized, it can be theoretically scaled infinitely among the several cloud providers. And through its design, Backstage actually became cloud platform agnostic, meaning that for the various providers such as AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, Backstage can be deployed to them easily. So what's next? Well, first of all, as of time of recording, the release of Backstage 1.0 should be imminent, which ends the current development cycle. For the next cycle, various components have been suggested. These include, but aren't limited by, improving the tech docs by implementing an add-on framework, create a security plan to mature the project for the future, and improve the search function, which currently still has some issues. These will be looked on in the next year or so. For the longer term, Spotify keeps the roadmap private, but there's nothing suggesting that this project is going anywhere anytime soon.